decide to separate from Canada and choose to become a 51st state, then they would get a lot of the benefits that we have. And this 51st state, that means America adds another Texas to its states.
At the end of the day, not only is the United States of America our largest trading partner, north and south, they're our most trusted and important ally. So our goal is to continue with the relationship with the United States.
First, Alberta requires guaranteed corridor and port access to tidewater off the Pacific, Arctic, and Atlantic coasts for the international export of Alberta oil, gas, critical minerals, and other resources in amounts supported by the free market rather than by the dictates and whims of Ottawa.
The Western provinces just officially announced their intent to become the 51st to 54th states of the United States. And yeah, I know how insane that sounds, but it's real, it's written, and it's on the record. I've been warning that Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Interior BC weren't bluffing. They were building. And now Ottawa's worst nightmare has stepped out of theory and into paperwork. So the West isn't asking anymore. It's applying for statehood.
Alberta will be taking steps to better protect ourselves from Ottawa.
That Alberta could become the 51st state of the United States of America, low taxes, not have to deal with all of the green energy weird policies that's hurting farmers in Alberta and everything else.
Let's get one thing straight. This isn't some fringe fantasy anymore. The West has officially shifted from protest to execution. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and the interior of British Columbia are now coordinating what they're calling the pathway to statehood. And it's not talk, it's legal filings, verified petitions, and cross-border meetings already in motion. For years, people laughed off Wexit as this meme. Well, the meme just turned into a movement with signatures, court reviews, and deadlines stamped on calendars. And if you think Ottawa can laugh this off like some other tantrum, well, think again. The West is now treating independence like an administrative task, not just a dream.
For an extreme sign of Western frustration, look no further than this upside-down Canadian flag, where hundreds gathered to discuss separation.
We are going to make Alberta great again, and that is when we cut ourselves off from the leech that is Eastern Canada.
And here's the ugly truth nobody in Ottawa wants to admit. This breakup was engineered by their own arrogance. For years, they've treated the West like a revenue stream, not a region. Every policy out of the capital has the same fingerprints: equalization transfers, carbon taxes, emission caps, tanker bans, all built to punish the people who actually produce. You drill, they bill you. You build, they bury you in red tape. You succeed, they tax it like a crime. So, of course, people snapped. You can only be told, wait your turn, so many times before you realize the system was never built for you to win. The mood has flipped from negotiation to escape. Out here, nobody's asking how to fix Confederation anymore. They're asking how to replace it.
Province, or if it decides to become incorporated into the United States, I think Americans would welcome that because this is an energy-rich province.
And to be honest, the West isn't bluffing anymore because the numbers are on their side. Alberta's GDP per capita is around $90,000, higher than anywhere else in Canada. Saskatchewan powers the grid with potash and uranium that the entire world depends on. Manitoba holds the transport arteries, rail, freight, and ag exports that keep the economy alive. Even Interior BC has timber, gas, and minerals. Ottawa just keeps suffocating with red tape.
Canada, the province, is seeing a tidal wave of pro-independence momentum. Not fringe internet chatter, by the way, but a full-on political groundswell backed by voter support, legislative changes, and active referendum planning, of course, that will push into 2026 when that vote happens.
These provinces don't need bailouts. They bankroll the nation. They generate about 70% of Canada's export value, but see less than 30% of the federal reinvestment. That's not unity. That's economic captivity dressed up as patriotism. And when the builders of the country realize that they're the ones being shackled, the conversation naturally shifts from loyalty to liberation.
Bill 54 lowers the number of signatures needed to trigger a referendum from 600,000 to about 177,000. It also extends the number of days required to gather those signatures, going from 90 to 120.
You want to know how serious this is? The petitions are already in motion. We're not talking about online polls or protest signs. We're talking about verified signatures, legal filings, and committees reviewing the paperwork for actual referendum. Over 600,000 signatures have been counted across Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and interior BC, enough to trigger what experts are calling the pre-referendum procedural phase.
They want this lady and Alberta to just sit down and shut up. Well, here's my response to that. I will not be silent. Alberta will not be silent.
Premier Danielle Smith.
And once that bureaucratic machine starts, it does not stop. Volunteers are being trained for ballot management. Legal teams are dissecting the Clarity Act. And motions are being drafted inside provincial legislatures. The West isn't just venting anymore. It's documenting its exit, step by step, signature by signature. Ottawa can delay, but it can't deny. The process is officially alive.
Many Western Canadians have expressed frustrations. A recent online trend called Wexit, standing for Western Exit, has gained over 200,000 members on Facebook. The movement is calling for a separation between Western Canada and the rest of the country.
And if you think that this is just noise from the fringes, look at the polls. Nearly 68% of Prairie residents say they'd vote for separation if Ottawa keeps suffocating their industries. Around 60% of Albertans and Saskatchewanians believe the West has too little influence in national decisions. And here's the part that really cracks the illusion of unity. 3 out of the 4 Western Canadians say that they feel disrespected by their own country.
Oh, we don't mind taking a nice gift from them, but we really don't want them at the party. It's not as if the world won't use what Alberta is producing. Why should they be paid less than a fair price for it?
That is not radical sentiment. That's a majority waking up. People aren't whispering about independence anymore. They're debating it openly at cafes. They're at their job sites or at town halls. The taboo is dead. The West doesn't feel alienated. It feels done. When loyalty turns into exhaustion, you don't wait for reform. You start drawing new borders.
It's not like Ottawa is a national government.
Motion is carried and so ordered.
While many Albertans slept, their Premier Danielle Smith saw a major victory as the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, Bill 1, was passed.
And the strategy isn't chaos. It's lawfare with precision. Alberta's Sovereignty Act of 2022 and Saskatchewan's 2023 Resource Autonomy Law were never symbolic tantrums. Each clause was built to test how far a province could go in rejecting federal interference without triggering a full legal standoff. And guess what? They held and Ottawa blinked.
As a start, I will soon appoint a special negotiating team to represent our province in negotiations with the federal government on the following reforms requested by our province. We hope this will result in a binding agreement that Albertans can have confidence in. Call it an Alberta Accord, if you will. First,
now the same playbook is being scaled up. Petitions convert into referendums. Referendums trigger negotiations. And if those negotiations stall, the fallback plan kicks in. Direct engagement with Washington. The Alberta Prosperity Project already sent delegates to D.C., and insiders claim that the U.S. officials privately said if Alberta votes to secede, America will recognize it. That turns fantasy into leverage. Ottawa thought the West was just posturing, but the table just flipped.
Saskatchewan is the sole producer of potash in Canada, and it provides the U.S. with 85 to 90% of its potash needs, accounting for $4.2 billion in export revenue.
But here's where it gets wild. The integration already exists. Over 99% of Canadian oil exports already flow straight to the United States. Alberta produces about 87% of that oil. Saskatchewan ships the potash and uranium that keeps U.S. farms and reactors running. And Manitoba's railways are basically the veins that feed American Midwest. The trade routes, the pipelines, the refineries, they're already south-facing. So when people say joining the U.S. would be complicated, I call that denial. The infrastructure's already built. The commerce already flows. The only thing that hasn't changed yet is the flag on the paperwork. Statehood doesn't create a new system. It just formalizes the one that's already running underneath Ottawa's nose.
The cutbacks from OPEC But we're also seeing the projection that we are going to, in the United States, we'll get to about 12.5 million barrels per day, which is a record, a little bit over that perhaps, 12.56.
And the United States knows exactly what's at stake. Washington isn't treating this as gossip. It's strategy. With OPEC tightening supply, Russia weaponizing oil, and global markets scrambling for stability, the U.S. sees Western Canada as the missing piece of its energy independence puzzle. Alberta can fill 2 million barrels a day for U.S. demand and still have room to grow. Saskatchewan's potash and grain could reinforce American agriculture for decades. That's why statehood isn't being seen as charity, it's a mutual benefit. America gets secure resources on home soil. The West gets freedom to produce without political chokeholds. Under U.S. rules, there's no endless review panel, no multi-year approval trap. You meet the standard, you build it, that's it. The same clarity that turned Texas and North Dakota into energy giants could turn Alberta and Saskatchewan into continental powerhouses.
In recent decades, Alberta has been an engine of Canada's prosperity.
The economic engine.
The economic engine.
The economic engine.
Even today, this is a claim you can find right on the Government of Alberta website. It's also a frequent argument of the separation movement, which believes Alberta oil is the tireless workhorse of Canada's economy.
And that is exactly why Ottawa is panicking behind the curtain. If the West walks, the whole federal balance collapses overnight. Equalization payments vanish, the redistribution machine dies, and the East loses its golden goose. The numbers are brutal. Alberta alone has sent over $600 billion east since the 1970s. Saskatchewan, another $250 billion. Manitoba and BC combined, around $400 billion. Add that up, and that's $1.25 trillion drained from the West to bankroll programs in Ontario and Quebec. Once that flow stops, the math stops working. Ottawa's deficits balloon, the dollar slides, and the endless national unity speeches turn into desperate budget meetings. The fear in the capital isn't about losing territory, it's about losing control of the cash. The moment Alberta and Saskatchewan declare their vote, Canada's financial engine cuts the cord.
Have been optimistic that we would find a path in the trade that happens across North America, across the 49th parallel between Canada and U.S. is important for both countries, and I view it as one of the strongest trading relationships in the world. And so I've always been optimistic we'd find a way.
And here's what flips instantly under U.S. rules. The money finally stays where it's made. No more equalization drain. No federal bureaucrats slicing off your revenue for someone else's vote bank. You make it, you keep it, you grow it. Alberta's budget would balance in a single fiscal cycle just on resource revenue. Saskatchewan could double mining and ag investment with predictable permitting. Manitoba could upgrade freight corridors without waiting for another round of Ottawa stimulus.
Saskatchewan's premier says he's in support of Alberta's renewed push for a new oil pipeline to the west coast. Alberta made the proposal themselves, with plans to submit a formal application under the federal government's major projects mandate.
In America, production isn't punished, it's rewarded. Pipelines get approved, projects get built, investors show up. The difference isn't ideological, it's procedural. Strict but clear standards, and once you meet them, no one moves the goalposts. Under that system, Alberta and Saskatchewan wouldn't just survive, they would thrive. The West's frustration turns into acceleration the moment it crosses that border. That's why 2026 is shaping up to be the year that everything snaps into place. Petitions are verified, the legal groundwork's done, and referendum training is already underway in towns like Red Deer, Brandon, and Moose Jaw. Spring 2026 is Alberta's vote window, and once that clock hits zero, the dominoes move fast. Saskatchewan follows, Manitoba signals next, and parts of BC's interior line up behind them.
Prime Minister Mark Carney not mentioning separation in a Friday morning press conference. An online petition in support of Alberta separation has over 220,000 signatures as of Friday.
Ottawa's response so far? Silence and recycled talking points. But out here, the tone's different. It's confident, organized, and past the point of caring what the capital thinks. The West isn't threatening bureaucracy. The West isn't threatening anymore. It's executing. Bureaucracy has become the weapon, not the barrier. And when the paperwork catches up to the politics, well, the map changes itself.
He also found that 58% of Albertans think separation is a real possibility, and 28% of voters in the province would welcome it.
What changed out here, it's not just policy, it's identity. People don't call themselves Canadian anymore. They call themselves Western. In Medicine Hat, Moose Jaw, Brandon, you hear it everywhere. They're not raging at a flag. They're done carrying a country that lives off their work and calls them the problem. They mined the uranium, drilled the oil, fed the nation, and they got punished for it.
That the West is once again completely out of step with central Canada, and because that's where the votes are and the greatest number of seats are and the greatest number of senators are, it's clear that we're never going to get a fair deal, no matter how hard people like Jason Kenney or Scott Moe try to get us a better deal.
That's not alienation, it's divorce. Nobody's saying, maybe Ottawa will listen. They're saying, we're leaving. It's not pride, it's survival. And once people stop identifying with a system, that system's already collapsing. And the money knows it. Capital's already moving west. Investors are already pulling out of Ontario and Quebec and pouring into Calgary, Regina, and Saskatoon ahead of the 2026 break. U.S. energy funds are circling Alberta like it's the next Texas. Freight companies in Kansas and North Dakota are redrawing maps through Manitoba. Well, Ottawa clings to unity speeches. The money's already gone. The separation isn't coming. It's already priced in.